in December 2024, work in Singapore is going to be very different due to the flexi work arrangements. But actually, maybe not, cause we all actually have a misconception. Here's why. So. Since the announcement of the flexi work arrangement in mid-April, workers in Singapore are slow, Gucci, no like that use one. Yeah, basically, you might think that employees cheer and employers cry, but here's the thing. You won't see any difference in December 2024, but maybe more in December 2025. Cause there's a big misconception about this, which is as big as people walking into a Xiaomi shop wanting to open an M19. Here's the misconception. It's a new thing that will change how we work. It isn't. In fact, it's COVID-19 that has changed how we work. You see, flexi work arrangements are very common in some other countries. For example, in the UK, a law was passed in 2014 whereby if you work for at least 26 weeks in the company, you can request for flexible working arrangements, and the company must consider a request fairly. Recently, the 26-week requirement is removed, and you can request it on the first day. Now, in Singapore, come December 2024, it's not a law, but a guideline. You see, laws and guidelines are different things, but guidelines can have powerful effects. I will touch on that later. You see, unlike the UK whereby FWA is part of the labour law, it isn't here in Singapore. Labour laws are laws that employers cannot break. If not, they will be and fine or jail. For example, a few labour laws in Singapore are a maximum of 44 hours per week for certain workers, must give salary at least once a month, etc. If your employer breaks the law, like for example, not paying you, then MOM will come for the employer. These are laws which are mainly under the Employment Act. Guidelines are kind of like recommendations. There are many guidelines, and here's a bad example that is important. Working 5 days instead of 5.5 days. I will explain later why it's a bad example, but you get the idea. Some companies are still working half day on Saturdays. So, by December 2024, there's no new law that forces employers to allow flexi working arrangements. There's also no new law that forces employers to do anything. We have a new PM, but no new labour law. Instead, there's a new guideline. Employers should have a system to allow employees to request for flexi work arrangements. And the guideline also indicate that employers must respond fairly based on the business needs. The parliament is in charge of making laws, so on the first parliament sitting after this new guideline is announced, lawmakers ask several questions. The Minister of State for Manpower, Ms. Gang, who for some reason reminds me of the 5BS I do every morning during NS, explain everything. On questions of whether this will make employers engage offshore workers, which is like remote workers overseas, she said that this is already happening. If not, what the heck do I have to speak in standard English when I call customer service for my food delivery? Now, why isn't it a law? Because according to Ms. Gang, there are lawmakers who want it to be a law instead. She said the tripartite partners, which comprises the government, the union that represents the workers, and an organisation that represents the employers, felt that it will not be helpful. And instead, if we use guidelines to guide the conversations, it will be a more practical and balanced approach. Which leads to your question, if just guidelines, got use meh? Got teeth meh? 2 words. Market forces. Now, remember I talked about the 5-day and 5.5 work week example? It's not a good example as a guideline because there's not an official guideline to it, but it shows the power of market forces. Now, let's say if you're a super talented worker, you have a choice between a 5-day work week job and a 5.5-day work week job. Which one will you choose? If you choose the 5-day one, many would too, which leads to the 5.5-day company short of manpower and have to change to 5-day. This is how market forces effect changes instead of forcing changes. If guidelines lead to more companies adopting FWA, then companies that refuse to adopt will be forced to adopt too. Therefore, December 2024 might just be the start, but with market forces, we might only see the effect on December 2025. So if you're watching this on December 2025, please tell us if a 4-day work week is finally a reality or not. You can watch this video to know more about flexi work arrangements. Also, subscribe to us if you think you become smarter.